Okay. Come on now. Why is this thing glitching out on me again? I don't know why this happens. What did I do? What did I do other than start a new stream? Nothing has changed. So why the hell is this thing close to clipping on me? Anyway, I guess I'm just going to have to figure out something else. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show after the show. It is the end of another trip into a book. Into a book. I'm very distracted right now because I've literally had to turn down almost everything that I have over here so that the audio does not clip. Let me there you go. Did that make it any better? Nope. Anywho, I don't know. It's just you and I until this goes public one day. Then people can complain across the board. But let's just jump into this. I have here in my hands a really, really wonderful book. I think overall, and it's not just because it's one of our books that we have to like every book that's out there, but I really enjoyed it. I think that this overall was a very believable read for me. I think that the authors really took great care in simulating what we would be going through as a nation, as a planet, from the media aspect, the social aspect, the spiritual aspect. What would we be going through in the many phases of this event? One phase being the denial phase, the mathematical impossibility or improbability phase, the media circuit, this and that, sending up the astronauts, and then starting to go into a little bit more deeper, the denial phase. And that's when we start seeing the math start becoming a little bit more narrow. Then we get into the strikes. We get into the tidal waves. We get into the subsequent storms. We get into all of the things. The initial deaths, the secondary wave of deaths, those who are not able to sustain themselves. There's no food anywhere. There's nothing. People who are dying of broken bones that can't be set properly, infections, all of that. Trying to find people, trying to stabilize themselves. How do you try to throw this all together? Relationships, how just the laws of man change to fit the situation. Where everybody comes to grips with what the old world was built on and what we're living with right now. It's a really, I think that this has just been great. Now, the ending was pretty abrupt, and it definitely could have gone on for at least another maybe 50 pages. But I gotta say, I'm also not completely offended by the way that it changed either, or the way that it wrapped up either. I'm gonna take these off because there's no reason why I should be making myself even more sensory deprived here because I have all this. I can't even hear myself in there. So here's what we're gonna get through. We start off with the Expendables. The Expendables is pretty much Harvey, some young people, Marie Vance, who I got to say, I've got respect for Marie Vance. I got a lot of respect for her now. She's a badass. Okay. Her at the beginning, I was like, F this B. And I'm not really a big fan of Harvey either. But Marie, at least Marie's just kind of just like, she's like tough as nails. She is. And I don't know. I got to say, I really like her at the end, especially since she was down to fight. She was DTF. And you know, when everybody starts hooking up, like I knew Harvey and Marie were gonna hook up. I knew that they were gonna fool around, because it's just like one of those things. Like in this situation, when you're under that kind of stress constantly, I can just imagine like everybody, like, you know, sex being one of those things where it's just, yo, human to human, can we just blow off some steam right now? Do you mind if we just blow off some steam? Seriously. With all these situations that they're in being so life and death, being so colossal, you know, the magnitude being so huge, I knew that was going to happen. I knew they're going to take a break. They're going to just take a break from fighting and have sex. I knew they were going to do it. Brian in the chat said, I love Marie and she knew who she was. Yes, she did. And that's just what it was. She was tough as nails. And that's a character whose arc turned toward that positive where, you know, perhaps she's a little bit too overbearing for you. Perhaps she's a little bit too strong of a personality. But by the end of the book, I'm tipping my cap to Marie. And she is just taking account of who she's going to shack up with. She's going to get George Christopher. He doesn't know it yet, but we're getting married. Like, all right. Now we lost people. Jellison, he dies. You can see that he was just going to give up. He was going to give in. The body was going to give out. Dan Forrester, we learned that he had died sometime afterwards. Though the magician, he was. And all of his books, the stockpile of books, those have been triangulated and preserved. So not only did he show up just in time to give people some really life-saving instruction on the mustard gas, the thermite grenades, those were huge. Huge. Mustard gas, ladies and gentlemen, that saved the day. The cannibals were taken out. They were BTFO'd. They were stopped in their tracks. That's huge. But this Expendables chapter was pretty big because you have Harvey, Marie, some of the kids, things like that. They're out there. They're trying to put these blocks in the way of the cannibal army, and you're realizing, oh man, there's nothing that's stopping them. There's nothing that's stopping these people. And it was very nerve-wracking because you don't know how this could end. The world has already been pelted by a comet. It's not even like one of those things where it's our Armageddon and you're sending Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck up there to blow an asteroid apart and save Earth. Earth has already been hit. So, you know, it's just like, I'm not totally convinced that this is going to have a positive end. So there's already that uncertainty there. And Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle, they are very, very good throughout this entire title of keeping you uneasy, throwing you curveballs, and giving you different things to think about, especially by way of making the characters contemplate what is going on and how different everything is, and how the old rule book has been totally thrown away. So that's something that you're going into. And this opening chapter, they are really not stopping. They are really not stopping at all. The cannibals, they're moving their way up. But then they hit it. They catch a break. They catch a major break, and that's where we're moving forward. So you know what? Instead of going through all my stuff, because I have a lot of things here underlined, I am going to just go to your. I'm going to go to your entries on the thread and take your calls, because then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the epilogue. That's really what it's all about. There's a major. Okay, I'll just put this out there. There is a major debate that happens in the final pages of the book, of that last chapter before the epilogue. Major debate on whether or not the power plant was worthy of marshaling some troops, some manpower, going down there, saving it from the remnants of the cannibal army, saving it and building on the technology that is in that power plant to be able to really get a head start on civilization, on electricity, on things that make sense again to us. And it comes down to this. It comes down to wonderful debate. And I, again, credit to the authors here, because as people are debating, my mind is changing. I don't know if this happened for you guys. I don't know if this happened for you guys, but let's see here. Where is it? Think about it. Hardy said patrol spot. Okay, so Tim Hamner comes back. He's got a piece of shrapnel in his hip. Johnny Baker's dead. People are really messed up. Some of the cops that are out there are dead, wounded. They're in bad shape. But over here on the compound, the Jellison compound, everybody is in a celebratory mood. They had defeated the Empire. They defeated the Empire. The cannibal army is no more. We're just going to count our chickens now. We have more than enough resources to go into the winter. We are set up to be a very, very self-sustaining and flourishing agrarian society over here. We don't really care. We shouldn't care about a nuclear power plant, however many miles down the road or whatever it is. We have what we need to survive, and we can't spend the manpower. And I started understanding what they're coming from with that. Let me see. Where is it? Is this it? Tim. Oh, wait, Hardy. Hardy looked worriedly at the senator, and then motioned to one of the women near him. He spoke to her, too low for Harvey to hear what he said, and the woman left. Then he stood at the lectern again. Fragile and beautiful, he said, but not much use to a farming community. They were already just relegating themselves to being a farming community. Tim exploded. No use? Power, clean clothes, light. Then Al Hardy comes in. They're all luxuries. Now, at this point, think about this. Power, clean clothes, electric light. Being at the point where, no, those are just luxuries. We can do without them. Let's just keep ourselves nice and focused here. And at this point, I understand where Al is talking. He said, luxuries, are they worth our lives? We're a farm community. The balance is delicate. Not many weeks ago, we did not know if we would live through the winter. Now we know we can. A few days ago, we did not know whether we could resist the cannibals. We did. We're safe. We have work to do, and we cannot afford losing more people for a needless war. He looked at George Christopher. You agree, George? Neither of us runs from a fight, but do we have to run to one? Do we have to run to a fight? Christopher says, not me. We won our war. That's it. So they don't want anything to do with the power plant. And I said, I get it. I get it. But then the astronauts, especially Delante, Rick, they really came at it. Hardy said, think about it. Patrols, spies, an army of occupation, all to stop one fanatic from getting one hit on one crucial piece of equipment and putting it out of commission for one day. That's the task, isn't it? So they're like, it's just too much resources spent to protect this thing that is still so vulnerable, the power plant. But then we have, let's see here, Leonilla, one of the Russian cosmonauts. How many lights? Oh, here we go. Hardy nodded gravely. Yes, I suppose we could. We could beat them, but first we have to take it, and then we can't do that with magic weapons. Grenades and gas bombs aren't much use in this kind of attack. We'd lose people, a lot of people. How many lives are your electric lights worth? This is when the whole argument changed. How many lives are your electric lights worth? Leonilla comes in and says, many. If I had proper lights for operating theater last night, I could have saved 10 more people at least. And then from that point on, I said, okay, I'm back with them. I completely understand. That trumps it right there. That trumps it right there. And then they keep on. And then, of course, Rick, he really jumps in. He jumps in big here. Sure, we can huddle here in our valley. We can stay here and be safe, and our kids can grow up herding pigs and shoveling sewage. There's a lot here to be proud of because it's so much more than what might have been. But is it enough? Is it enough for us to be safe when we leave everybody else out in the cold? You all say how sorry you are to have turned people away, to have to send people outside. Well, we've got the chance now. We can make all of outside, the whole damn San Joaquin Valley, as safe as we are. Or there's another way. We can stay here, safe as ground squirrels, but if we take the easy way this time, we'll take it next time, and the next, and the next, and in 50 years, your kids will hide under the bed when they hear thunder. The way everybody used to hide from the great thunder gods. Peasants always believing in the thunder gods. This is an amazing... I love this ending because it's true. It's so true. They have an opportunity right there to jump ahead of all that rebooting of society. You're talking about children like Tim and Eileen's child, who that almost dies in childbirth. They said that they had like a 50% infant mortality rate, and then that got better once they started concentrating on hygiene and things like that. But you really start thinking about early man. You start thinking about all of the supernatural explanations we gave to what we now see as pretty common natural occurrences. He says, and the comet, we know what it was. And in 10 more years, we'd have been able to push the damn thing out of our way. I've been in space. I won't go there again, but your children could. Hell yes. Give us the electric plant in 20 years, and we'll be in space again. We know how, and all it takes is power. And that power is right out there, not 50 miles from here. If we've got the guts to go and save it, think about it. Those are the choices. Go on, be good peasants, safe peasants, superstitious peasants, or have worlds to conquer again, to control the lightning again. That was the big, what do we do now moment. And I thought it was fantastic. It really was. They jumped out there. Then, of course, we have the epilogue. Their baby was born. I love the little things where they saw an airplane going overhead. The fact that some aircraft had survived. That they're not. It's not the Stone Age. You know. There's a lot of stuff to look forward to. A contrail. Imagine getting excited over seeing a contrail in the air again. So that's that. Dan Forrester died. We saw that. And there's more. But going to you now. Yeah, Rick rocked that speech. You're darn right. But, and that's the thing here. It's a 600-something page book. 625 pages or so. It would have to be close to 700 pages. I would have really loved to have been there for the fight at the power plant. I thought for sure we were going to get a firefight at the power plant. But, you know, I guess they were just thinking about how they can wrap this up in other ways of, you know, I wouldn't say cutting corners, but to get to the point in an acceptable way. But I feel like I really wanted that firefight. Okay, let's get to your stuff, and then we're going to take some calls. Jalen Wennings says, there have been 2 600-plus page novels throughout my life that I've read in which I feel like I need about 100 more pages to answer all the questions I have at the conclusion. Windswept House and Lucifer's Hammer. So, thanks, Frank. I know. See, the thing with Windswept House was you have the Slavic Pope at the end. You have Pope John Paul II. You understand what's coming up against him. You understand the choices that there are to be made. But we had the luxury of being decades in the future. Whereas Windswept House came out in 96, 97. Pope John Paul II didn't die until 2005. And we can see this all stacking up, and it's real. I mean, we had the cipher there for all of the different We know the cardinals. We know the bishops that he was outing in that book. We know about Klaus Schwab in that book. We know about the World Economic Forum, and you can see the deep state and the deep church, and you can see this shit coming together. Everything that Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano talks about, and you can see it. So whereas we didn't get the extra 100 pages with Windswept House, we are 30 some odd years in the future, and we know how things changed. Now, obviously, they weren't able to take John Paul II out of office. He was too beloved of a figure. He was allowed to just wither and die there at the Vatican. But everything in that book that they were attempting to set up to force a resignation of John Paul, to force his resignation, to rule by committee, to destroy the pontificate, and to create a precedent of popes that resign and getting rid of that and whatever, and steering the influence of the church into the influence of the globalists that were plotting for the world and that were very, very satanically motivated. You can see how that, I mean, they made the very next pope after John Paul resign. And he lived for like 14 more years. So, you know, and now they're talking about Francis. I'm sorry, we're off topic. But what I'm saying is, yes, for something like this, 100 extra pages, I wouldn't mind have going an 8th week with you guys. The other one, you know, we lived the 100 extra pages. So Windswept House still hit very, very hard. I'm sorry for that little tangent. For those of you who never read that one, you still can. That's the first serial out there, so you can read along with it, and it'd be like you were just there. All right. Let's see here. Thanks for picking another title that has given me a few sleepless nights. I mean that in the best way. I thoroughly enjoyed both books. In an earlier session, I mentioned I couldn't help but compare the book to The Stand, but now I see the contrast between this and The Stand. The Stand was 1,100 pages for making sure it explained every single last detail. Lucifer's Hammer leaves several things open for the imagination. For me, the top unanswered questions are as follows. What was the fate of Eric Larson, the cop that shotgun blasted the peeping Tom in the prison cell? He was more than a peeping Tom. There was a lot of buildup for that scene, and that was just it. Nothing after that. You know? I don't know. But stuff like that, I can let it go. It can be something as anticlimactic as Eric Larson just died of starvation. Walking for days. I don't know. A lot of things. Major Roston's Ark. Maybe I missed it, but I assume that U.S. launched missiles, but was it at Russia, or did they message in time to strike China? I don't know. Actually. Obviously, there's no reason to strike Russia. Russia was completely overtaken by glaciers. And so the question is whether or not they felt compelled to jump in and go 2-on-1 on China. Because remember, Russia's firing on China was to clear way so that Russians had a place to go as they went south to escape the glaciers. So it's a great question there with Major Roston. Sharps and the rest of the survivors at JPL, we know that they didn't make it to the stronghold or the nuclear plant. Did they change course for Colorado, or did they suffer a terrible ending at the after Hammerfall? My guess was that they were killed from either the elements or some roaming horde of, as modern media would call them, teens. And number 4, the final assault on the plant. How did that go down? Oh, I know. Was Armitage killed? I don't know. Did Hooker play a role in what would seem like the New Brotherhood's surrender? It's a great, great thing. You would think that something would be said in there. Unless this was... I never read anything about there being a possibility of a sequel. though that's obviously never happening. But they do reference Armitage being alive. Obviously, Hooker. Hooker saying amen was the last thing that Aleem, what's his last name? Aleem, I don't know. But that's one of the last things that Aleem hears before he dies from the mustard gas. He hears Hooker, right there, amening along with Armitage. And finally, I'd like to add that I actually had some compassion for Aleem Nasser in the final moments. About a year ago, I was having breathing trouble at work. Initially, I thought it was anxiety and stress due to the recent passing of my father and a case of the COVID. Turns out I'm highly sensitive to some chemicals at work. I work in a body shop, so my luscious Franciscan beard I've been growing since 2016 had to be shaven off so I can properly fit a respirator and not be choked to death on my own phlegm. It's all cool now. I'm rocking some serious porn stash and I can breathe. If you know anything about the mustard gas and the reason why they stopped using it in World War I, then you also know about little tiny stories of great significance, like the story of Christy Mathewson, who was an American baseball icon in the early 20th century, pitched for the New York Giants. He went off to war. Christy Mathewson was known as the Christian gentleman. He was just one of baseball's all-time stand-up guys and an amazing competitor, widely loved. But he went off to serve in World War I. He got a whiff of some mustard gas and it hurt him badly. And he went on to live some time afterwards, but he came back and he was unable to play baseball ever again. And it's just one of those things where you're constantly living with lung damage from these gases and the infection that you're constantly fighting. And this is, prior to 1920, I think, or whatever the hell it is. So he's, there's not a lot of options at your disposal. But once that lung tissue is destroyed, what do you got? So it's one of those things where with mustard gas, if you're going to go, it's better that you got a big, big chestful and you just drowned as quickly as possible, because there is lingering effects just from having a little of that stuff get into your body that is just torture. So yeah, I felt it. I felt it for Aleem. Most of the other one, because Aleem, he was a thug. He didn't mind doing things, taking lives and stealing from people, and he just, I don't know, didn't take He understood that what he was doing was wrong, but at no time did he ever consider that stopping was an option. So, these are people that you're just like, oh, that sucks. But you know what? You live life terribly. A surprising amount in this final session was centered around Harvey and Marie, but the battle was intense and kept me enthralled. I enjoyed it much more than Maureen Love Triangle, or was it a hexagon? That whore. Maureen she's a little slutty. She is. Let's be honest. Maureen's a little slutty. Prior to Hammerfall, she's just, that's just it. She's just working the room there. Let's see here. Vesper says 2 thoughts. Maureen's simple realization that if you could feel terror, you wanted to live. It's similar to the idea that feeling pain isn't always so bad, as it reminds you that you are alive. Also, when Tim sees the contrail from the plane in the sky and realizes that there truly is life out there, I will never be able to see a contrail again without thinking of that. Thank you so much for book club, and thank you for all that you do, Frank. Thank you, Vesper. I know. For everything that we say about contrails and chemtrails and what the hell they're spraying, this and that, if you lived through Hammerfall, to see that would be like, confirmation of life. Not only life, confirmation of a life that we remember prior to this turn of events. And to think that, okay, we had a stake in preserving this power plant, and this thing is going to give us 50 to 100 years of opportunities of getting some good power around here, maintaining this thing, building up a couple more generations of workers teaching them the skills to maintain, if not improve and expand this technology. I mean, that's it. One power plant and the people who are able to upkeep and all that information, man, all the information saved by Dan Forrester, it's a huge thing. It's a huge deal. Dyslexic Angel said, well, the book didn't end like I had hoped or anticipated. I find the ending anticlimactic, and it is. It's abrupt. It's abrupt. But then I have been accused my entire life of being a Pollyanna. I was hoping for a resolution of something. At least the good team had won. What I feel I have in this ending is simply a ceasefire or a hushed pause until the next war. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, you have to expect that if they got the power plant, if the power plant is in their possession, then they were able to vanquish whatever was left of the cannibal army. And then hopefully everybody you're dealing with after that is going to be dealing with you on even terms. I mean, that's what it sounded like. I don't know. We'll have to see. No, we're not going to say. You're right. We're not going to say. But yeah. So the Expendable chapter, Dyslexic Angel says, it was a very stressful one and viewed it for the characters as possibly an exercise in futility. It did feel that way, but they never gave up. The Valley of Death chapter, relentless onslaught of cannibals, reminded me of the final fight of the Lord of the Rings. Again, defeat, despair, desire to run, smashes like the large tidal wave, took much of the earth, and then kept reading. And then there is Marie. I like her, and I would like to think I would be like her, but I fear I would be more like Harvey. And then Yahoo to Dan Forrester for his catapults and the contents he worked tirelessly to create so they can be flung into the valley to the enemy below. I know. The mustard gas was essentially Aragorn showing up with the ghost army, the mountain warriors, that he went in there and he woke them all up. He claimed his kingship. He said, let's go. Aurora and I were just watching Return of the King yesterday. She loves it. She loves it. And today we were in the backyard. We had two wiffle ball bats. She wanted to sword fight. She wanted the ring, and we kept stealing the ring back from each other. It's like, you can't have the ring. And she's going nuts. She loves it. She doesn't get all the finer points, obviously, but she knows who the good guys are. She knows who the bad guys are. She knows that the ring is making everybody crazy and it has to be destroyed. And she's starting to see the value in loyalty and friendship. Oh, Lord of the Rings, if it teaches you anything, it is just friendship. Tim Gordon said that we should read that book but that would be like an all-year thing. Now, I don't want to scare anybody off. I mean, it would take a couple of months to read every book, I think. I have to look into it. One way or another, I'm reading them on my own. But anyway, Aftermath. Angel said, I appreciated the symbology of there was bright sunlight in the room. How fitting. Light at the end of the tunnel, but it doesn't last long, as we soon see. The dark clouds are not far behind. Foreshadowing. In my opinion, the ending, anticlimactic for the hope, the sunshine I would have liked to see at the end of the story. All in all, a good read. Thank you, Frank, and book club members for bringing back the joy of reading. Not to mention reading books I would not have picked up. Sharon says, the earth is just too small and fragile a basket for human race to keep all its eggs in. Page 627, a quote from Robert A. Heinlein. Like many previous posts, I agree with their comments about how quickly the book ended. You are filled with hope for the survivors, but there are so many unanswered questions. I especially enjoyed the phrase, give them the lightning again. Absolutely. It's repeated many times in the last pages of the book before the epilogue. They were Jellison's final words before he crumpled to the ground. It's what motivated them to follow Tim back to the nuclear reactor site, to give their children a better life, just as all of us hope to do. Another good read, Frank. Thank you. That's a great way of saying it. Very great way of saying it. Just to simplify it, it's talking about giving their children a better life. Knowing that you can do something that is tough right now that is going to ensure that their children, and their children's children are going to be able to quickly feel like what life was for us, but perhaps even better. Perhaps even better. I mean, I hate to say it, but what kind of a world do you think that we would live in? Do you think that the world would be better after the comet, after the tidal waves, after the initial chaos and people trying to get their bearings? But if technology could be reestablished, if community could be reestablished, tell me how much better things would be. I know you say, well, Frank, this is all contingent on most of the world being killed. Well, I'm not hoping for death. I'm just saying, imagine just think about the restart button. Just think about the restart button getting hit. Think about all the balances that were restruck. You know, women were not slaves in this. It's not like, all of the comforts, the creature comforts of 20th century America went away and then women just became slaves again. I mean, people had to rethink how they made alliances, how they formed families, and how they shacked up with each other for security in a chaotic world. But this wasn't like a slave and master relationship. There was just a rebalancing of the scales. And I think that everything that we deal with these days is about balance being taken out of whack by way of government intervention, any other kind of authority that means to make some kind of a weaker aspect of humanity stronger, or to just fix something, to perfect us a little bit more, to tinker with us socially and all that stuff. And what does it do? It takes us farther and farther away from the base nature and reality of our species. And I guess for as long as they can keep the illusion going, for as long as the systems can stay afloat and there's always assistance coming from one central bank or another, I guess you can say that this is just the way it is. But if that goes away, there is nothing propping up that illusion anymore. Nothing. And I think I might use this tomorrow night. I think thankfully all this is going to be recorded. I think I'm going to take notes on all this stuff, and I'm going to bring it up tomorrow night. And try to form it into a question for the show. Robert Solario says, I was curious as to how the establishment press reviewed this book in 1977. Could only find 2 from 11 years ago. Here are some quotes. This is great. Thank you, Robert. There's this attitude I see in a lot more in the more hardcore survivalists or preppers. They obviously can't wait for civilization to fail so they can start shooting people. The authors quote, wow. The authors, no, see, here's the thing here. Who's being held back from shooting people right now? Depending on where you live right now in the United States, nobody cares about anything. And it's mostly because they believe that they can get away with it. Because those great stewards of society, the police, are being deballed in so many ways. And of course, where police are not enough to be able to be on every street corner holding down the place like it's a prison yard, people are being rooked of their ability to defend themselves, which holds things in balance in a different way as well. But of course, here you go. This is the media, by the way. The authors use the opportunity to kill a few other bugbears, like women's lib and environmentalism. No. That is what is killed. That is the illusion that dissipates once this shaky system you've created to instill the illusion goes away. That's it. The real comeuppance is delivered to a hippie commune, An army of black cannibals led by a white guy against the pro-technology white folks led by senators, astronauts, TV producers, and scientists. God bless America. You know, that is something. An army of black cannibals led by a white guy against pro-technology white folks. You know, you think about what these rich white people at the top, the George Soros types, what they have done to invest in the destruction of inner cities and the rabble-rousing of poor, uneducated black, especially men. I mean, you think about what we've seen with Black Lives Matter and Antifa, both of those kind of different wings of the party coming together to raise hell in 2020 and beyond, and even before that with Black Lives Matter. But it is actually pretty interesting. Now, Black Lives Matter is not engaged in cannibalism, but it's pretty interesting. I mean, there's the illusion that Black Lives Matter is a of the people, for the people, by the people kind of a thing. But we know where the money comes from. We know where the community organizing comes from. We know the ideology behind it all. And it's something that has been given to black people or anybody who's willing to listen. And that's why they seize the schools and everything else. So that's actually kind of astute by the member of the media who thinks that they're, you know, exposing an absurdity in the writing. But it's, and the fact that this is beforehand, this is before, you know, however many years, what is this, 11 years ago? I don't know. Definitely before 2020. Most unfortunately, the bad guys are cannibal Luddites with conspicuous concentrations of melanin. Minor characters include unsympathetic, knee-jerk, sexist men and realistically competent, sympathetic women. This is a serious white dude sci-fi steeped in Heinian 70s tropes. This makes me appreciate the book club contribution so much more. Oh, I'm glad that we're all over that. Thank you, Robert Solario. Oh, how typical the media struggle and wriggling about. How typical that they actually, and here's another example of it, where they're actually reading the room, but they scoff at it and they turn it into something else and say, like, yeah, actually, what are you not getting here? What are you not getting here? Knee-jerk sexist men. I even said it in the middle of this. You know, if society comes crumbling down, many men are not going to make it. You know, we're not, just because we're men doesn't mean that we're all John Rambo. So, but you know, that's just the way it is. That's the way it is. It's not like, oh, the women are going to be subjugated and the men are going to be lords over their domain. No, it's not. Not going to be it at all. But you know, these people, they're lost in their politics. That's great. Thank you, Robert. Gal says, great summary, Dyslexic Angel. I also felt a bit let down with the unanswered questions about certain characters. Let me open up the lines. We have a couple minutes left. What really jumped out at me in the final section was Jellison's final words. Al, give my children the lightning again. Give them the lightning again. And then, as Tim looks up to see the jet fly overhead, you can fly, but we control the lightning. What came into my mind when I read that was Prometheus, who, according to Greek mythology, gave fire to humans. The epic struggle they endured is almost the stuff of myth. Thank you. Gal thanks me, and I thank her too. Thank you so much. I think it's her. I don't know if that's just a Bible verse or... Let's see. Let us see. Kali, as a community was contemplating whether they would go save the nuclear power plants or not, I was on the side of not saving it. I don't know if it's because of my temperament or because I'm a woman, but I couldn't fathom the idea of losing more people and being in worse shape. Hey, listen, I was with you. But once Rick started going, my mind changed. But I was with you at first. I was like, you know what? Just be grateful for what you have right now. You beat a major. You're not going to have to worry about them and blah blah blah. And you're safe. Build what you have here. See what you can do to make contact with other people. You got the radio. Work with radio technology. Just go out there and get all of Dan Forrester's books. See what you can put to use there. Start making penicillin again. Whatever. But then Rick just got me. Callie says, let's take the win and plan for tomorrow. If I were there, I would have thought, we make this community work. We don't need electricity. The Amish have been doing it. We can do it too. Personally, I'm pretty risk averse, so I would just try to make the best of the situation without risking the lives of our people. I guess in the end, I was on the wrong side of the argument. I'm wondering if anyone else had similar thoughts or ideas. Yeah. At first, but then I was roused to the other position. Robert Solario commented, said, for me, they needed to finish off the Brotherhood. They needed to finish them off. That would take a big load off, no doubt. Ruka82 said, I struggled with that decision too. I wasn't sure what I would have wanted in the same. Because like you, I would think humanity survived and thrived for thousands of years without electricity. But it was a hard life. And it really came down to Leonilla. She was the one that kicked it off. Rick really brought it home. But when Leonilla was talking about her work as the doctor, that if she had electric light, if she had electricity, she could have saved 10 more people on the compound that had died from the fighting the days before. And that is something worth thinking about. Say, how many people are we going to commit to this? Well, if you win, you're talking about, I don't know, infant mortality and then just day-to-day tragedy, sickness, injury. It's a lot. I don't want to live in a world without electricity. I don't want to. I contemplate what that world would look like and what would I have to do. But, I don't want that. Who the hell would? Let's see. Mimi Lady says, which character between Harvey and Marie do you like better at the end? Marie. I found great respect for Marie when she refused to retreat until they had blown all the charges they had set. She was motivated by love for her son. She knew that winning George Christopher's heart would ensure her survival and success in the future. Harvey never won me over. He won the princess in the end, though, but only went along with protecting the nuclear plant when he realized that was what she wanted. Tim was the ultimate hero of the story to me. Tim really found himself. Harvey landed the girl because Baker got killed. I don't know. Harvey's still got a son out there somewhere, floating around. Probably already has grandchildren. Ruka says, I will try not to repeat all the good points that everyone else has made so far, but like everyone else, I felt the ending was kind of abrupt. Although I had a feeling that would be the case after the last book club, when I realized how few pages we had left to read and how much it seemed needed to happen. Tim grew on me more and more throughout the book and really became one of my favorite characters. When Marie and Harvey hooked up, I don't think I could have rolled my eyes farther back into my head. I don't mind a book that leaves things open at the end, but I still think this book could have probably had another 100 pages or so. I felt like they rushed the end a little bit too much. This being my first book club, I thoroughly enjoyed it and can't wait for the next one. So glad you're doing this, Frank. I am too. It makes the entire year feel amazing. The Robe, Dandelion Wine in June, I think we're going to have a wonderful time with. Never-Ending Story in August. That's going to be a trip. And then October, John Ward, Steppenwolf. I don't know what to expect with that one, but he said it's good, so we'll do it. Let's see. NJSF. As others mentioned, I also felt the lack of closure and details toward the end unsatisfactory. Feels like the authors ran into editor's deadline and had to just deliver it. It was not pleasant to read that communism would survive even if on a POW camp. I know. They essentially have a Marxist priest in that Peter guy, the comrade, looking over the POW camp with all of the cannibals that had been given some time. Oh, how do we even forget the slavery conversation? How do we forget that? The debate about what do we do with these people that have surrendered? Do we kill them? Do we release them? Do we enslave them? Like, oh, well, I mean, we could use the labor, but let's not call it slavery. Like, well, what? It's prison. That was really interesting. That really was. I was both sad and happy to know that Forrester did not to survive. He finally had reached somewhere where he could survive, but sacrificed himself for the greater good. A martyr certainly to be enshrined to the stronghold history books. And here's a quote. Yes, please. What I need, he thought, is fresh insulin. There's nobody here who knows how to prepare that. If they ever give me the time, I can do that myself. But first thing is to bring the benefits of civilization back to the stronghold. And of course, mustard gas and thermite. Hey, listen, it's a joke. It's ironic. The benefits of civilization. Of course, we're talking about military dominance to be able to ensure that you have stability. The roller coaster of Harvey's sex life was quite the journey. I know. This guy is getting laid more after the world ends than some of us did in college. While I understand many dislike him for cheating on his wife and going to work, and even in these chapters sleeping with Marie, I feel like it's one of the most realistic characters of the whole book. His flaws are there for everyone to see. He regrets them and tries to overcome them. To me, he represents the flawed average man. He didn't really look to cheat, but was weak to let it happen. He wanted to protect his family, but got overwhelmed on Hammer Day and went to work to ease the anxiety by pretending all was well. In short, he is not perfect, not a hero, but not a bad guy either. Through the book, he's challenged. At times, many times he falls. Often he rises to the occasion. He was fully aware he was expendable and went anyway, leading the task force, overcoming his cowardice, even if the example from Marie was needed. It's good points, really good points. I understand it was a cope mechanism. The affairs, just, I don't know. The coldness with Loretta was the thing that got me. I'm not going to condemn somebody for having an affair. Like that's not something I'd be like, oh, to hell with this character. To hell with it. There's nothing redeemable. This character cannot be redeemed. I'm not like that. But yeah, he definitely, for somebody who was fumbling around trying to figure it out under the most extreme of circumstances, he came out all right in the end. I'll give him that much. Let's see here. I'm going to skip down a little bit. Another character that had some growth and redemption was Maureen, Princess Maureen, from helping in the hospital to being adamant that the power plant needed to be saved, and not just because of the death of Baker, but for the overall good. If you could feel terror, you wanted to live. Strange that she'd never understood that before. It was worth almost everything to spare people that feeling of helplessness and doom, but first you had to conquer it in yourself. And had the doctors been more than choosers of the had the doctors been more than choosers of the slain, Maureen didn't want to ask. Maureen was also instrumental in the discussion on what to do with the rest of the Brotherhood. Then he, Christopher, looked thoughtful. Slaves. I can think of a lot that we can do with slaves. I'm glad that NJSF brought this up. Would you like it better if we call them imprisonment at hard labor? Hardy asks. See, this is the debate. Would their lives be so much worse that they were part of the Brotherhood, or worse than convicts in prison before the hammer? No, Maureen said. It's not them I'm thinking of. It's us. Do we want to be the kind of people who keeps slaves? See, here's the thing. You are a microcosm of civilization that you just lost. And inside of that microcosm would have to be some kind of a system of law, justice, punishment. You're going to have to do that. I wonder if Maureen racked her brain, felt the weight on her conscience every day she woke up in life prior to Hammerfall, because there were hundreds of thousands of people in federal prison on her dime, the taxpayer's dime, any day of the week, every year, for as long as she's been alive. That is state-sponsored slavery, no? That requires tax dollars. Is that something that just weighs on you to know that? Or do you feel good that there is a place where people who are just not compatible with civil society are kept away from people who do a lot better in public? I don't feel anything about it. I hate when people are wrongfully imprisoned, and when we learn about Justice Department or justice, any kind of corruption within the justice system. But it's just interesting because it's so microcosmic. It's so much more personal that we're enslaving these people. No, I mean, they're in prison. What do you want to do? You want to let them go? Okay, you want to let them go? Maybe they'll run away, or maybe they will stick around. We're seeing that with emptying the prisons or not putting people in prison. No bail. We see what's going on. We have such a great vantage point of all this. You know, in many ways, Lucifer's hammer has hit the United States and the planet Earth. In our timeline, Lucifer's hammer has hit. It wasn't a physical impact. It was a cultural and spiritual one. And we're seeing it. The prisons are being emptied, or people are not being allowed in. Instead of a tidal wave of, the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean, it's a tidal wave of migration, of a human tidal wave. I mean, there's so many things that we can do to take this in and analyze it. And it's, again, how the hell does it happen that all of these books become so relevant to where we are right now? Yeah. Let me take one call over here that came in. And hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Frank. This is Southern Lady Tiger.
Hey, Southern Lady Tiger. So you're ending the show with me right now. What is on your mind, and what'd you think?
Okay, I thought the book was great. It did make me and my husband realize that we're not prepped enough, for sure. But one thing that I noticed, it was way back in one of the previous chapters. It was on page 425, and it talked about how the Israelis and the Palestinians were at war again, and there was no one there to stop them. And I thought to myself, wow, that's going on today.
I know. I mean,
I know it was still back in the 70s as well, but still, that it's still that progression that has not stopped.
I know.
And now, after Hammerfall, there was no one to stop them from fighting.
Yeah, and that was just at the time of this, 1977. This was printed. That regional conflict, to the way with all the the markers of how we know it today, that was only 30 years old back then. I mean, or I should say, it was already 30 years old, that fight.
Right.
So
Right.
you add another 45, 47 years on top of it. Jeez, I mean, it's just incredible what stays relevant, and really great point on that. And I hope that you and your husband enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to the next title with you.
Oh yeah, we're definitely looking forward to the robe.
Me too. Me too. All right. Well, if that's all, if you have anything else, go right ahead. But if that's all, I hope you have a wonderful evening.
That was it. And just thank you so much for leading us this way, because we really enjoyed this one, and I can't wait to dig into the robe.
Me too. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon. All the best to you and your husband. I had last night, I was thumbing through the robe because I showed my father. I showed my father, said we're reading this in March, and so I had the new version that I got so I can mark it up, but I have the old version, and I'll show you in March when we read it. My grandfather's version of it, my father's father. I said, "Do you know how much Grandpa wrote in this?" So I opened it up. I'm thumbing through it. I'm just seeing all of his lines, all of his brackets, all of his exclamation points. As at the top of there, I opened up one book and it said Act 2, Scene 2. So obviously he was taking notes. He was bringing this to the stage. My grandfather was blocking out a play. He was going to actually do the robe. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm so happy that you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to take down a little bit of what I said tonight to turn it into a nice topic for tomorrow, a short show, but one that should inspire some good calls, I hope. And in the meantime, email, message, thank you for another wonderful journey. Book club. All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good one.